Okay, I want to talk about my love of taking pictures at night and and taking pictures mostly in New York. And so I thought I would start with this photo, which is very, very old. It's a picture from my family's house where I grew up in North Carolina, grew up in Durham, North Carolina. And I remembered being really little, like 3 years old, and noticing that when you looked out at the backyard, this is through the porch screen, that it was looked like a perfectly nice backyard with a lot of woods and everything behind it. And I thought it was nice, but at night it became so mysterious, kind of like a dramatic place, kind of full of, and it was the same place and there wasn't anything really to be afraid of, but it sort of gave me we used to call it heebie-jeebies, you know, and I thought it looked really interesting. So when
How old, Lynn?
oh, the picture,
Yeah.
oh, the picture was taken when I was in graduate school. So the picture's, quite a few decades ago, but I saw the feeling of the night. I'm just showing a few super early ones just to get the idea. So when I started taking pictures, I was quite fascinated with everything, day and night, people on the street, Gary Winogrand on to Cortez and people like that. But the first few years whoops, I'm sorry, it's skipping around funny. I'm going back. You're getting a preview. I just want to show you the black and white first. Okay. So I had this passion for moving to New York. So I'll skip the childhood part. But one key thing about my childhood was that two things. My father and brother were really good amateur photographers, and they really keen, they put the camera on the telescope in the backyard and with the rotator on and things like that. But the other key thing was that my parents were professors and we took ships from New York Harbor to Italy from when I was 5 years old, then when I was 10 and then 15, to go live there because they had a sabbatical. And the experience of going through New York was riveting. I love New York. Why isn't it proceeding forward? Okay, so this picture I put in, I'm only showing you a few black and white. The black and white was a very big part of my first years as a photographer, as might have been for some of you as well. But this picture I took once I was a graduate student at Pratt Institute, and I was just going across the Staten Island ferry with back then I was using a Leica, and I had it all set for the light, but I wasn't thinking of any particular picture. I was kind of set for anything. And I saw the sister ship, so to speak, the Staten Island ferry going the other way, passing, and it riveted my mind to the experience of being on the ships going across the ocean to Italy. And luckily I had it set on like a 60th of a second or something. And I mean, I was really, really zen connected to that boat because it reminded me so much of the kind of fanfare that we experienced in the middle of the ocean, which normally had nothing to look at. I mean, of course, beautiful skies and stars, birds and things, and the water and horizon. But I mean, there weren't very many other ships, but then when we crossed the sister ship, it was pretty stunning. So that picture was kind of a memory. And this was a picture from my apartment at that time. We're talking the 90s now. And I think what appealed to me about the window was that first of all, the glass on the top half had the old glass in it, and that's why it's a little wobbly. And the whole thing gave me a kind of a Hitchcock feeling. I was thinking more of Hitchcock than I was Hopper. Doesn't really matter. Wait, okay. Just because I want to keep the black and white together, I wanted to just show you a couple of pictures. Mostly I photograph in New York, but occasionally I went to Paris. and would take pictures. And this is from the Eiffel Tower looking down on Pointe Diana, which goes right under it. And my husband thought it was funny because it was just full of tourists. And he said, why do you choose to go to a place that's full of tourists when you could have the whole city to do your own thing? But I find sometimes tourist places are very interesting.
So Lynn, you always started to shoot in a fine art way, right? I mean,
Yes, I've always been more bent on my fine art photography, though I also am a commercial photographer. So I do commercial photography and I do fine art, and I also teach. My parents being professors, the whole house was full of, the life of professors, and I thought it was a really great way to live. But when I got to New York, I thought it'd be more interesting to be a commercial photographer for a bunch of reasons. One of which was I didn't want to just feel like a carbon copy, though I admired my parents. I just didn't want to be like a full-time professor. So, and plus I'm kind of really active more than scholarly. Like, of course I read books, but I'm not like somebody that's going to sit and pontificate for hours and hours on theory and things like that. Anyway, so thanks for asking. Yes. Oh, and this is in Palais Royal, that's also in Paris. So these images I just showed because they're kind of very important and like oldie goldies to me. And I was happy that I was able to have some, well, I had a book published by Rizzoli called Acquainted with the Night, and my husband, who's a poet, well, the publisher asked if he would edit some poems to go with the pictures, and I thought that would make it look too much like a Hallmark cards or something, but the publisher allowed us to make it a sort of a meditation on the night. So my husband picked poems that weren't like side by side, like here's Central Park, a poem, it's like all the poetry and all the photography kind of was a dialogue. And it was very lucky that I was able to get the show, and then the book. The book actually helped me get shows in different places. So after that book came out, I felt that I needed to change something because I had worked so hard for a number of years on black and white, mostly New York and wherever else I could get to. But I felt I had to explore something different. And I never really thought about color, but I don't know if you all get like this, but like in between projects, sometimes I'm like in a panic, like, what am I going to do now? Like, it's best if I don't even finish a project and I'm already thinking of the next project, but I wasn't. So the way I switched to color was I went out with two cameras, the same camera, like it was a 6x4.5 Fujifilm camera. One camera had color and the other had black and white. And I just took the picture, the same thing in both, with film, of course. And after trying many things, what worked was the color. So, but I decided to explore the city in a different way. I mean, I'm kind of skating over a whole lot of stuff, but a lot of my pictures in Acquainted with the Night are from all different places, even India, mostly New York, but wherever I went, it didn't have to be about anywhere in particular. It was really about the night. But when the New York City pictures, some of those were really famous places like Rockefeller Center. So I had a lot of iconic places. And so when I started to switch to color, time had passed too, because by now it was about 1997. And I felt the city was changing. So I started exploring it in differently. So I really love the Central Park.
Beautiful.
I mean, it was kind of like crazy seeing all the colors. I was really used to black and white. As a matter of fact, when my husband and I flew over to Paris one time and I had the color, I didn't sort of do both at the same time. After I decided to switch. And I said to him, what do you think Paris is going to look like in color? And he just burst out laughing and he said, it's always in color. I thought of it as a black and white, like it was going to be a different place. And it was in a way. Okay.
It's interesting how these photographs are contemporary for now, without people in them. It's the way the city is, right? I mean, that's sort of interesting.
Well, most of my
With
pictures
COVID.
don't have people, and
Yeah.
it's because I really like to meditate on the city. I like it to be my own, kind of, not like I'm a czar, you know, but I just like the feeling of like being like in a peaceful place, and it's not about the
Mhm.
people. But this little kid ran in front. Luckily, I had the camera on the tripod with the cable release in my hand. I was like taking the picture of the scene, and the kid ran into it.
Mm.
And it was lucky because then her mother didn't even see me, the mother, which is funny because there wasn't anybody else there but us. But she told the kid to come back because she wasn't supposed to be on the grass. So that was funny. But it worked much better than the ones without people. So I'm not saying I have to have people, but I'm just saying that it was interesting when people started to come into my pictures. And these are just different pictures from my second book, which came out in 2008. It was called Night Shift, and it had an introduction by Arthur C. Danto, a very well-known art critic. I was honored to have become friends with him. He lived near us. Anyway, these are pictures. I mean, you know, we're experiencing a lot of vacancy right now, and the original title I had for this book was Vacancy, but I decided that the idea of vacancy was too much like made people think more about motels or
Mhm.
stuff like that, or empty stores. I mean, it didn't seem to suit my project, so that's why I changed it to Night Shift. But what was interesting was a whole different kind of structure started to appeal to me. You know, this is much more architectural, sort of. And I love light. I just love the surprises of different artificial lights. And does anybody know why the colors of the lights are different?
I have no idea.
Ages of the bulbs, probably, except in some cases, maybe they just put in the wrong color, but
Ages of the bulbs.
I
Okay.
think they do change. I learned it from a lighting designer. Anyway, I'm going to go a little quicker. These are just, you know, this is Chelsea. This is all prior to 2008.
Wow.
So I did another color book in 2015 called Dark City, and the rest of my presentation is a combination of some from one book and some from the other because they do overlap a certain amount. But one thing that's the distinguishing characteristic of the color from the black and white is that it's only rare that there's like a really iconic place. But sometimes it's not a rule. It's just that I started to venture into places where it was obvious industry had started to give way to residential areas. And actually, I taught briefly I mean, it's parenthetical, but I taught briefly at Parsons a long time ago. I mean, before people all had cell phones and could take their own pictures, and digital cameras were so frequent. And they asked me to teach lighting designers how to photograph light because of my use of color and everything. So, you know, of course, we went through the whole thing with the tungsten film and the daylight film and the white balances and stuff. And it was so fascinating. I feel that I learned as much from them as they learned from me. But it made me really hyper alert when I walk around to see the play of light on buildings. And it's one of the reasons I like to take pictures at night and twilight. So what's happening here, this is in Dumbo, right under the Manhattan Bridge, and the subway goes across and it sort of flickers, you know, sparks, and also its lights very bright sometimes, and it paints this kind of light and shadow on that corner. As of course it's really, really loud. Like every time I've taken a class out there, I can't even talk. They can't hear me. It's kind of like I have to screech in their ears, and why bother? You know,
And
so
Lynn, you came upon this?
yes, but I
Oh.
have to say I went back a few times because I wanted to use a very high resolution medium format camera.
Mm.
And the first time I went there was a FedEx truck, and I thought, oh, I'll wait it out, thinking he was going to make a delivery and leave, but he never left. I don't know where he must have gone to dinner.
Lynn, I hate to interrupt. Can you move your mouse so that we can see the whole image and not the control panel for the slideshow?
This?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Anyway, so this is residential now, but I've been in New York long enough where I remember Dumbo not being Dumbo. It was, I don't even know what they called it. Maybe they called it Dumbo back then, but to me, it was, you know, you could smell spices and all kinds of funky things because there were so much industry there. So it's really made a big change. And I'm fascinated with that also. And this is the same area. This is when they were building the Manhattan, you know, the Brooklyn Bridge Park underneath the Manhattan Bridge.
Wow.
I got special permission to go in there when they were doing this, but I don't usually do that. So I like going into places with special permission. And just some more pictures where it's light and shadow. This I thought was funny because I was focusing on the the vacancy idea, and, or, you know, and most of the other pictures had so little in them in terms of the stores and stuff. And it was chock-a-block full of stuff, but it still felt kind of lonely. And I thought it was funny. I saw a person walk up the hill and they went away before I got ready. So I asked my husband to walk up, and I got him not to be self-conscious because I told him I was taking this picture when he went down the hill. And so he looked more natural because he thought I wasn't taking this picture. But anyway, I just like, sorry.
No, and Lynn, do you scout first, or you're just walking around and you find, and the light just hits you and you realize this is something special?
I usually don't scout as much because the places change so much in the light.
No.
You know, I mean, I like to, I mean, I scout in that I would go back to the same place, maybe even multiple times, but I always feel like I have to be ready the first time.
Right.
And then this, I thought it was funny that this was in the height of the, you know, when the downturn of the economy around 2008. And I thought it was very enterprising of the landlord to have this mobile sign that said space for rent. Because like, if you look, this is like 51st Street, like around near Times Square. And I thought it was strange because if you look down the block, every single building was dark, whereas like that whole area is usually kind of known for being kind of bright. And so having this bright colors pouring out on the street added some interest to the block and to the building, of course. Anyway, but I really just like the colors.
So Lynn, you know, with your husband being a poet, someone had, Ted and Noon had a great question. With your husband being a poet, that collaboration, which one of you inspires the other one more? Or is the collaboration a one-off here and there? Like, how does that work for you as a creative couple?
Oh, well, we're not really like Ted and Noon because, I mean, we are in that we're, you know, happy together and everything, but he's a poet. He doesn't take pictures. He doesn't come with me. I mean, he admires my work and I admire his, but you know, he doesn't actively participate in the pictures at all.
But do any of his words inspire you to get somewhere else, or your imagery inspires him with his prose?
I don't think my imagery inspires his poetry is very much more kind of political.
Okay.
Doesn't really relate, but he also publishes a poetry journal of other people's poems. It's called the Manhattan Review. It's really highly respected. And he always used one of my pictures on the cover. So, and that's how we actually met, was because he needed a photographer to take a picture of a painting for his first issues and that's how we met. So
does he pay you for that photograph?
That's a great question because we had a big fight about it. Because I was thinking,
you need a rep.
Yes. I said on my gravestone, it's going to say you owe me $35. Oh, so this is a more recent picture. It hasn't appeared in a book or anything, but I thought it was remarkable how some of these empty stores, I'm not seeking empty stores. I did it so much in 2008, so that this being taken like in last fall, you know, it's kind of like I'm not seeking empty stores at all, but I can't help but be kind of slightly attracted by amazing reflections and I'm a kind of a pushover for wires and ladders, you know, anyway. And this is near Grand Central. It's on Madison before the one Vanderbilt was built, or it was being built, but it hadn't gotten up high enough. The one Vanderbilt, that big skyscraper next to Grand Central, is like 50 stories, or it's huge now.
Yeah.
And so you could not see this reflection anymore but you still could at that time. So just some other ones. I'm into shadows too. This is near where I live. It's 125th Street, but over by the river. And they were renovating the store. And this actually went into the first color book. And I was surprised because what you see is all this stuff in these reflections, like on the right over here, this reflection is like New Jersey and the Hudson behind me because of reflection. And then, you know, these lights are coming in from street lights and cars and all kinds of stuff. It's just, but when I see something like this, I realized I have to shoot it immediately because tomorrow the person's going to come and move the ladder, you know. So if I have to come back with a better camera, like a bigger format or something, I always have to do it quickly.
And Lynn, do you go out by yourself at night, or are you
I
with
usually
somebody?
do.
You usually
I
do.
can
Okay.
concentrate better, but I have some really great friends who sometimes want to go at dawn. We sort of make it, you know, it's a kind of a fun thing. You know, we'll get up early, or we go in the evening to maybe Bushwick, or I don't know, even the High Line.
Right.
So this reminded me of Felix Gonzalez Torres, I guess his name was. He had a lot of fallen lights in a sculptural piece, and it was in the biennial in Venice. And it also at the Whitney Museum, they had a whole stairway with this kind of lights. But this was just left there. One thing I never really explained to the people who read my book, either book, that like when you see a picture like this, I'm not in the space, I'm outside the window. So I bring the Windex, you know, it's like I don't get permission to go inside. I just shoot what I see, but that may make it better for you to understand why there's a little glow of blue down here. It's coming from the twilight. And it was fun when I took this because it was super dark back here, and I didn't know that this came out much better than I had even seen with my own eyes. So that was cool. I'm almost done here. I don't know what time it is, but just put in a window. And this is Red Hook. I love Red Hook.
Yeah.
And then people started to appeal to me more, but you know, it's tricky with, I didn't talk to this person. He was just there, and I had to shoot very quickly and try not to get him in motion. So I had to use a fairly high ISO, higher than usual, but luckily I had the right equipment.
And Lynn, when you're shooting through windows a lot, how do you avoid the glare?
I usually put the camera right up on and sometimes I bring a piece of velvet with a hole in it for the lens and tape it to the window.
So right on the glass.
Yes, and I might take off the filter.
Okay.
I have to be super careful, but of course I take off the lens hood, you know, the sunshade. You have to you get in this sort of flow of it. And this picture, I kind of really fell in love with this intersection in Newburgh, New York. An assistant said her parents had moved there and maybe I want to come visit, and she'd drive me around. And I just totally fell in love with this intersection. And I took another picture that was in one of my books here without the figure. And it was just maybe a year earlier than when this was taken. I think this was taken at about 2015. Oh no, I'm sorry, 2017. The other picture, this building on the left is still a warehouse, more of being used as either a warehouse or an empty warehouse. And now with the lights, you could see that it started to become residential. And I find that, it's not that I'm trying to do a documentary about them, but I just love the mixed use of the architecture and just the history in this one corner.
Yeah. So Lynn, there's got to be times when you go out and you shoot and you realize like that shot, this shot is magic. This is just, I know this is going to be a beautiful, beautiful print, right? I mean, how exciting is that when that actually happens, right? I mean, because I'm sure sometimes you come back and it's not what I thought it would be, right? And then something like that last shot on that corner, you know that that's going to be spectacular.
Well, I was happy because the person, I don't usually bring a person to do anything, you know, to say, go stand there. I feel like I keep telling myself I'm going to do that, but so far I've been just finding somebody actually standing somewhere. And in that case, I said, could you go stand there? Because it was a friend of mine who had driven me there. I didn't plan on that, but she was willing, and she just took on the right attitude. Because, you know, you all know as photographers that if the person isn't, if they have a funny mentality or whatever's on their mind, it could almost show in the picture, even if it's from the back. And I just felt like she just fit the scene the way her attitude is just fine. It's perfect. This picture, I had never been to the Pepsi sign. I had seen pictures of it, and I was kind of like casting around where to go that night or something. And I went over there with a smaller camera, like a 645 roll film camera, and I thought it looked like such a rich landscape, and with the lights and everything, that I got up at dawn and went back with a medium format of, you know, 6 by 9 centimeter film camera and color film. It's kind of a little, it's an ebony. I don't know if anybody knows that camera. That's really good. It's kind of like a little view camera because I needed to get the feeling of the land. And then there are just a few more. It's funny because actually you were talking about my husband, and he helped me come up with this title for a workshop I'm teaching right now. It's called From Golden Light to Blue, photographing at sunset and twilight, or something like that. But anyway, it's from golden light to blue. And so that those words were in my head, and I was out shooting and I was thinking, well, there it is, the golden and the blue right there. I thought it was funny because the way I teach it's really, it includes sunset time all in, you know, itself, and then in between, and then the twilight, and then as it goes into dark. But I felt that this had both colors in it.
Yeah. So Lynn, like after shooting roofs like this and different elements, can you start to tell, oh, that's a refrigerator system, that's an air conditioned system, that's their heated, you know, have you garnished knowledge like that?
No, you have to come help me.
Okay, Michael, there's your answer.
I welcome pals. And this, we live, like I said, up by Columbia. I think I said it. Anyway, this is the viaduct, and it, you know, Columbia University has been building a huge new campus up there. I mean, they demolished blocks of these kind of other buildings that have been there many years, including restaurants and parking lots and storage units and storage facilities and things like that. There was a lot of controversy in the neighborhood, but, you know, they cleared away like 2 or 3 huge blocks. But it's, I find it, I kind of like the architecture, and I'm going with it, you know, I'm not fighting it. But I find it really interesting how they build the architecture. It seems like right up to the allowable line, you know what I mean? It looks so close. Anyway, I just love things like the viaduct. I think it harkens back to my trips to Europe too. You know, you take a train and you go in and out of these tunnels, you know, and so having these big snaking infrastructural elements, I find very appealing. And here's the subway platform at 125th Street. I don't even know what time it is. Okay, I'm doing all right. I'll finish in a second. This is in Bushwick. As you can see, this isn't my infrastructural detail, but it's one that appeals to me. You know, it's not in our neighborhood, but it's in Bushwick. Subways. And this is the last picture. I took it from a moving bus on the highway at dawn. Okay.
So
Can you
Lynn, where
repeat the
can,
software one more time,
can
please?
people purchase your books?
Oh, sure. I guess you could go onto my website. What should I do? Escape. You could go to my website.
Tell us your website.
Oh, www.lynnsaville.com. Or you could go follow me on Instagram, Lynn_Saville, and Saville. And then I could tell you. But I hope I didn't go too long.
No, that was absolutely great. A lot of terrific comments in the chat room.
Thank you.
That was really, really wonderful. Any books that you sell through this presentation, of course, you have to pay the VIG on that, but that we can discuss later.
Okay, I have, just real quick, I have 4 books. This came out by
there
Chris
you go.
Graves in 2018, but I think it was sold out. It's part of a box set of city pictures. Acquainted with the Night. This came out in 1997. This you have to really, you could maybe get one. They're kind of out of print. This was Night Shift from Monticelli in
Wow.
2008. And
So cool.
the last one, Damiani, in 2015.
Yeah,
Right.
I take that back. You don't need a rep. You're fine.
Well, thank
You're a
you so much.
businesswoman.
Can you send me the chat by email?
I guess that's a J question, but I assume we
Okay.
can.
Well, thank you so much. And if anybody has any questions, please email me. I would be happy, but I don't want to take up the time of the other people.